Anybody know at this time, at least, if they want to amend the agenda at all? No? All in favor? So 6-0. Judy also being absent, right? Our communication, we do have our student advisor here. Will, we invite you down. Always look forward to hearing from you.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is William Hughes. I'm a senior here at Fairport High School, and I am the student representative to the Board of Education this year. And so when we last meet, the last thing I mentioned was that generous living equates to this Fairport community greatly. And so I have a grand total from our Pennies for Parenting fundraiser that we did, and it was a whopping $320.25. And that's just from the spare change that students find in their pockets, in their backpacks, on the ground in the halls. And so it was amazing to see that just over 2 weeks, the effort put in by the student council, but also every student that donated, was just tremendous, because it helped such a great and worthy cause of getting food to families in need over the Thanksgiving holiday. And it was just tremendous to see that. And during this time, we also had another donation going on. Over the course of about 3 weeks, the school was able to accumulate tons and tons of toys for the Pirate Toy Fund that will benefit the boys and girls at Golisano Children's Hospital. And this comes at a fantastic time, as Christmas is just around the corner, and all these toys will be given to them as gifts this season. And so speaking of Christmas, there have been a lot of festivities this week with sort of an unconventional but yet really well done Spirit Week that was started, where the students have worn Christmas pajamas, dressed in Christmas colors like red and green. They'll be wearing ugly sweaters tomorrow, I think. Thursday is dressed like Santa, and tomorrow is dressed like your favorite Christmas movie. But all these are great ways that our school shows tremendous spirit and coming together in such a joyous time. But my favorite part of the week is actually what comes on Friday. And aside from it being the last day before break, there's actually something that really cool that happens here at the high school. And it's the Christmas Jazz Band concert. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been, but it is tremendous. And this is my third and final year, and I am so excited for it. Because it's just amazing to hear all the talented musicians that are there, along with the lights, and it's like a dance party, and it's just a wonderful time to be with all the classes together, all the teachers, all the students, just having a tremendous time together. And so lastly, there's one big topic right now for the seniors in particular, and that is the topic of college and the realization of it being our last year in this school, and the tough decisions that we will have to make and the memories that will be cherished forever. A big way that I've seen the seniors celebrate friendship and love over the years is the senior breakfasts, which have started to begin, and I can't wait until I attend one. And so this is just a great way to make some final memories and also look back on their journeys through the Fairport School District. And speaking on behalf of the students and the seniors in particular here, we just want to thank the school board, superintendents, principals, administrators for all the work and encouragement that you guys have done for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for sharing about the generosity of the student body, too, the toys and the money. That's awesome. And having seen, I think all of us have seen the jazz band concert, right, at one time or another. It is impressive and a lot of fun. Thank you for that great report. Because I don't have one, so I'm glad you did. So I will open up to anybody else who may want to say anything during the president's report, because I'm not going to do anything, or else we'll give it right to Brett. Okay.
Well, I'll just...
Well, I'll do a slow walk up
You
there.
can sit down, my friend. No, I just wanted to say, I'm looking forward to the jazz concert on Thursday. I didn't know that was happening, but that's great. And I did.
Friday.
Oh, Friday. Oh, I better script that. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's going to be quiet.
But I did go to the orchestra holiday concert last week, and man, what a treat that was. Really just spectacular. And it's, if you think about what your brand is, like, it's hard to think about Fairport without thinking about the music program, and that was just it was a wonderful concert, so.
That's right, I attended the band night, not the orchestra night, and that was impressive, for Martha Brown at least, yeah.
Okay, I'll pass my time over to you.
Wait, we're going to talk. So this is primarily for the board, but looking forward to next year, and Joyce, I want you to chime in on this too, because you're the chair of the legislative committee for Monroe County School Boards. And in February, we'll have a meeting with our local legislators to talk about what might be happening money-wise. Today, we're going to be talking about the budget, or step one of the budget, of about 25,000 steps. But there's been about a 25% increase, a change in the members of the New York State Assembly and New York State Senate. And so there's a lot of, when there's turnover, there's uncertainty. And one of the things we have been trying to do is to find out, give us the numbers, Matt, tell us what the certainty is. And as usual, there is no such thing. But if anyone on the board would like to attend that meeting in February to bring our points across and the things we're talking about, because we right now are looking at the priorities for the district and how those priorities change into money and vice versa. And it's going to be important for us to take a long, strong look at that and see what we can do because of the change in the legislature. So it's going to be a fun time. So there's my commercial.
The February 2nd, right? It's on our calendar, so.
I just know it's the first Saturday. I don't know what numbers are.
Yeah, February 2nd. Okay.
Brett, maybe we'll let you talk now.
Our Headley Farms residents, we appreciate the clarity and the advocacy, definitely with lots of purpose, and certainly we are committed to understanding and doing our best to meet the needs of everyone involved. So we appreciate that, and we'll look forward to continued conversations and, of course, your advocacy. Will, you said it perfectly. If I had to capture what the Board of Education's priorities are, they speak of friendship, love, memories, and making sure that everyone is guaranteed, and I underscore it, everyone is guaranteed a highly effective and affective journey in Fairport schools. On November 29th, we had the opportunity to engage in a community forum relative to our educational priorities of creating a 21st century vision. I want to share with you a 3-minute clip. It's well worth it. These students speak with great wisdom. Jamal Glass, their sophomores, and Jackson Dietz, another FHS sophomore, that speaks to what it means to be a Fairport student, and they give some really good advice relative to 21st century learning.
The biggest thing that you need in school, that I personally think after 6th grade, is that you need to be involved in both clubs and academics. You can't just like cram on your academics or not focus on academics and do all the clubs at school. You have to be able to balance them. Moderation. My mom always tells me you have to be well-rounded. So you have to have a bunch of different qualities that'll make people be attracted to you. And that's why I do Model UN, but I also take AP Global, and I take Spanish, and I also am a swimmer. It's a good balance of activities.
So some of the things that I've done to prepare myself since I've come to 6th grade is I've taken the higher level classes that most people shy away from, and this year I think I take 8 either college, AP, or honors classes. And I think the biggest thing is, and I know we've talked about it before, that when you go to apply for college, they look at what your school offered and what you took. So, okay, you might have a 95 overall average, but you took our Regents classes. So I also think that taking those AP classes, even if you have an 85, is better than having a 99 in a Regents class. And once again, like, just going back to sports, and I know for different people it might be piano or an instrument, which I think is great, but just for me personally, being on a sports team and knowing that's something that I possibly want to do in college has been a big part of staying focused and having a goal, and I know that's something that I want to pursue when I get older. And as far as going to college, I definitely want to do something in the medical field. My dream profession would be a specialty cardiothoracic surgeon, and I've always been interested in medicine, and science and math has always been kind of my knack, in which I've been good at. So some of the things that I've been doing is I do some of the pre-college programs over the summer at the U of R. Mrs. Hudak, the careers exploration advisor, has shown me programs at Highland Hospital, the U of R, and General Hospital, and those are the things I've been able to do to get real life experience, to know if this is something you want to do or not. And I also think that going out and doing internships and things like that are important, because you don't want to apply to college, get in, and then find out that you hate it, because you've never been able to go and actually experience it before. Like, you might have seen it on TV, like, oh, that's cool, that's fun, but that's not really what it is when you go into college and you have to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning studying. And I think that, like what Jackson was saying, being well-rounded and getting yourself into other things besides just all academics or all sports is a good thing, because colleges look at that. You have really good grades, but you don't know how to interact with another person face to face. Or you're the #1 lineman, but you're failing every single last class. So I think that that good balance and helping people find that is a really good thing. And outside of my family, my best support system has really been my guidance counselor. Even when I know people feel like, oh, you go to guidance when you get in trouble, but that's really not how it is. If you go to your guidance counselor and they're there to help you. And just being here, and it's November 29th. Yeah, it's November 29th. I've met with Mrs. Howe on multiple occasions just to make sure I'm taking the right classes. And after I took the PSATs to make sure I can check to see what my scores are and what that means and what can I do to get better has been a really big part of it. So preparing early makes you feel a lot less nervous as you go into your most important year, your junior year, when you take those big tests and things like that. So I think preparation and having a really good school support system is important.
Jarmel and Jackson spoke, hit it right there. They were talking about social emotional well-being. They were talking about having a well-rounded experience, academic excellence, engaging activities, extracurricular activities, real-life experiences. 21st century learning embodies what these wonderful students just shared. And you know, they're speaking high levels of truth. And you know, this Board of Education has always strived to give our students the most comprehensive experience possible. And this was going to be the end of my report. However, Friday came. And Friday was an important day, you know, throughout our community, when there was a newspaper article, and it was a newspaper article that hit home. It referred to all of our school districts, or many school districts in Monroe County. Fairport was involved in that conversation. It was about the experiences of minority students in our suburban school districts. In their own words, students were generally reporting feelings of being separate. Now, what's amazing about this is a few weeks before that, I met with some students at our 9th grade and students at our high school, and you know, they were not part of the article. One student was part of the article, but the other students weren't. And the comments and the conversations of these students paralleled word for word of what students were feeling throughout Monroe County. Somebody is speaking. You know, we're trying so hard in this district. We're doing so many great things. The district strives for excellence in the realm of access and equity. This is my 4th year as a superintendent. In all 4 years, it's been a district goal and priority. However, if you take a look in society, if you take a look at social media, we're falling short. If you take a look at what happens inside our schools with some of their perspectives, we're falling short. In as much as what we're doing, and we're doing so many great things that I'm proud of, that the board should be proud of, that our community can be proud of, but we need to continue to open our hearts and to open our minds and continue to engage in these conversations as we move forward. Thank you. As we continue to grow in this conversation, it's important to recognize that the Fairport Board of Education has, how are we doing there, Zach? Has invested, I got it right here, many resources and opportunities for students to interact, not only in Fairport, but throughout Fairport. There's an initiative called Rock to Change. There's clubs that students can participate in our schools. We try to make sure that they have voice and opportunities to engage in these equity conversations. Rock to Change is an incredible Monroe County effort. Unlike any effort seen throughout the state or the country, literally thousands of Monroe County students will come together and talk about race, equity, and diversity. We're proud to be leaders in that endeavor. All districts reported in that article inequality in some way. This is called disproportionality. Differences between racial groups in terms of entry into high-level AP courses, academic achievement, discipline, and special education. And these are real issues that we're learning about and we need to continue to get at in a very thoughtful, systematic way that sustains our voice in this conversation. We have an initiative called the SEED Project. Now, the SEED Project, National Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity Project, we have 200 teachers. Started out with 13 in 2014 and 15, my first year as a superintendent. Now we have 200 teachers who are engaged in this project where they examine issues on equity and social justice and how it even impacts their classroom. But even with all these great things that we're doing, we're engaged in a Monroe County effort on the Technical Assistance Center on disproportionality. We're volunteering ourselves to go there and invest time and resources. We are still falling short. Members of our leadership team from the Board of Education, Central Office, and the administrative team attended a conference in Ithaca this past summer on culturally and linguistically responsive educational practices. Basically, what's good practices in the classroom, common sense approaches to interact with all students. We're looking forward to growing that initiative. There's been incredible community engagement. We look forward to doing more community engagement as we move forward. We're forming a partnership with Empire Justice. It's a organization that will help us form co-ops with families of race and color in Fairport to talk about what are their needs, what are their interests in our community. I'm looking and exploring the opportunity to create a community task force on diversity in Fairport as well. Again, I do not want this to be a reaction to this article. As you could see, and I won't continue to go on with our list, we are doing incredible things in Fairport around this. But we need to continue to be intentional. We need to continue to be very pragmatic in our approach so it's sustainable. Right? Because we have an imperative. It's 2018 and we're still talking about this. And I think that resonates with me. Closing out the year, it's my last official report. And I look forward to having a holiday season. I hope to see you out and about in our schools or in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett. So our treasury report and investment update, Matt.
Hey, good evening and thank you. Tonight we have the treasurer's report and investment update for October 2018. We had a beginning balance of $38.6 million, receipts through the month of $55 million, disbursements of $12 million for an ending general fund cash balance of $81.6 million. Of the $81.6, approximately $69.2 million is invested in a mix between T-bills, CD, and in ICS sweep account, which is about 85% of the general fund cash. So,
Matt, as the rates are slowly inching up, and
yeah,
does that impact our revenues from those investments at all?
Yeah, it'll impact the actual revenue received for interest earnings.
Yep. In a measurable way? I mean, it's not going to blow our minds, I'm sure, but is there something significant?
Yeah, yep. And you won't see it until the T-bills mature.
Okay.
Throughout the year.
Laddered over time?
It's over time, yep. Depends. There might be some 1 month, there's some that may be 6 months, depending on the time of year of which invested, to be sure it hits at the appropriate times in the year with cash flow.
So, I mean, that might help offset some of the increasing costs around minimum wage or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fortunately, it's a fickle line item, though. It goes back down.
Yeah.
We can't get too dependent. Any other questions, comments? Then we are ready to move on to the consent calendar. Again, not an area of discussion, so need approval, but you can see everything that's in there. Based on previous discussions and as a way to make sure we express gratitude, we have had donations removed from the consent calendar, and you'll see that the next part of the agenda, right? But so, all but the donations. Motion to approve? Joyce, second. Marty, all in favor? 6-0. So we do have multiple donations that you can see from the Dudley PTA, the FHS Auto Club, multiple donations to them of pretty good, valuable vehicles and other things, so this is an impressive list. And due, at least on behalf of the board, to those organizations and individuals to say thank you for that, and we appreciate it. I think our students appreciate it, and especially the Auto Club. So we need a motion to accept what we've normally done at those donations were done in the consent calendar. But Kevin, second. Marty, anybody else want to comment, or? Okay, all in favor?
Getting donations
Oh.
from Massillon, how nice.
What's that?
Outside the community, we're getting donations from outside the community.
Right. Yep. Okay, all in favor? 6-0. Personnel actions, starting on the page 3, we have instructional staff actions first. The list there, quite lengthy, going through the top of page 5. Motion to approve. Joyce, did I see your hand? Yep, Joyce. And I'll second. Any questions?
I always ask the question on, you know this is coming, how are we doing in getting certified staff for both our, I expect it at our regular teaching positions, but also at our substitutes? I was here for a couple of months, so I haven't had a chance to ask this question. Pete, anything you want us to say?
So in terms of, let me start first with substitute teacher recruitment. And over the course of the past 3 years, as we have seen really a shortage regionally and statewide of substitute teachers, our recruitment efforts and practices have continued and also increased. So we now participate in the Teacher Immersion Fellow Program. We also work closely with some of our local colleges and higher education institutions, posting things in their student newspapers, working with a variety of different departments, having tables in their student unions, and really trying to attract those who are working towards certification. As a board, you've also increased our substitute teacher rate over the course of the past 3 years. You've raised it twice. We continue to work on different ways to recruit substitutes, but it is really a regional shortage. We continue to also see certain areas are hard to fill. And one of the challenges also is we're not seeing a significant increase in the number of students who are enrolling in certain programs than anticipated to come out with certifications. So in some areas, we are predicting statewide, not necessarily here in Fairport, but statewide potential for shortages. Technology.
How is the state doing on getting the certifications paperwork back to the people? So, I mean, we've always heard that they're in process.
So I think one of the things that we're blessed at Monroe One BOCES is they do have a certification person who works in Monroe One BOCES. Many BOCES do not. And Megan Fox is incredibly responsive to our district and to our employees. I always feel really comfortable referring someone to her because she'll give them the information even before they're going to apply so they know what to expect. We see those coming back pretty quickly. Although the state about a year and a half ago did change some of the different requirements, on paper, it looked like it might be easier if, let's say, you graduated from Geneseo. I'll use one of our state institutions. You went to work in North Carolina. Now if you come back, even though at the time you graduated from a state institution, you would have to take additional classes in order to get New York State certification. So some of the certification pieces, there's certainly opportunity for some advocacy, and I think Monroe County School Boards is going to be putting out some information on that, because I know we've been asked to give some information in. But certification is always a thorny issue that we continue to collaborate with Albany on to make it so there aren't barriers for good teachers to be able to get New York State certification.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just ask you to, this large number of resignations, just a house cleaning type of calendar event, or?
Yes and no. So when we see some resignations when it comes to substitute teachers, we see those at two main times of the year. One, we see it in June, when people say, gosh, I'm moving out of the area, or I've already obtained a probationary job. Then we also send out reasonable assurance notices, and those are due back to us really towards the beginning of the summer. What will happen, though, is as people have obtained permanent teaching positions in the fall, sometimes those hires don't happen until September, a little bit later. We do see kind of like a second influx of the group. So this isn't unusual, but I think because of the regional teacher shortage, we're seeing more people not available to substitute because they've obtained permanent positions. So I think it is a little bit larger of a group, but that really is for most of it. Some, too, are people who've moved out of the area, but by and large, it's many who've found permanent teaching positions in other districts.
Okay. All in favor? 6-0. Part B, athletics. That starts midway there on page 5 and takes us, well, it's all of page 5, but the motion shows at the top of page 6. So motion to approve. Marty, second. Maureen, any questions on this section? All in favor? Okay, 6-0. C, non-instructional civil service staff actions. They're starting on page 6 and going through to just the top of page 7. Motion to approve. Maureen, second. Kevin, questions, comments? Y'all in favor? 6-0. And D, Fairport Transportation Association tentative agreement. So need a motion to approve the agreement, tentative agreement. Marty, second. What's your name? Damon? Sorry about that. Any questions or comments on this?
Want to give us any highlights?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah? Very good. All in
Do I-
favor? Oh,
You want to give us any highlights at the public meeting?
I think I'd just like to thank the members of both teams. We really had
Six oh. Your hand was up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so presentations. We have our capital project update. Matt? Or?
Matt, you want to?
And tonight, again, we have George Spinaris from Campus Construction Management.
Hello, hope everybody's doing well. So I'm here to talk about the 2016 Transportation Facility Capital Project. Total project budget breakdown is the following. 2016 Transportation Facility Capital Project and 2015 Capital Improvement Project. Transportation Facility Capital Project referendum is $1.2 million. The incidental budget is $1,839,200. The construction contingency budget is $403,100. Transportation Facility Referendum is $8,957,700. The 2015 SIP referendum is $782,600. And the construction contracts budget is $9,743,000. Budget update, the adjusted construction contingency budget again is $403,100. The approved change order total is $97,809. The remaining construction contingency is $305,291. The construction project is approximately 57% complete. Contingency budget is approximately 24% spent. Contract allowances approved totals to date is $64,971. And the project team is following approximately $178,668 in pending issues. Both the Northside and Dudley Elementary Schools exterior work has been completed, and the final cost reports have been submitted to the State Education Department. Transportation Center, exterior, the site work. The fuel island and canopy work is ongoing. The bus warmers and the electric panels and outlets have been installed and are operational, so they're fully functional at this point. Site electrical work, installation of conduit for the canopy lighting, that work is ongoing. So we're almost completed with the canopy itself. Transportation Center, building construction work as of December, early January. The decorative stonework on the facade has been completed. We just received the sills, so that is the top piece, the cap piece, that will be installed probably sometime this week now that we have some pretty good weather. Detailing of the roof panels is ongoing. All the roof panels are installed. We're actually watertight, and on the dormers, the side panels are actually installed. The siding panels will be installed on top of the sills and the coping, so now that we have that, we can actually make the building look like it's supposed to look with the panel, so it'll look quite nice in the next month. Installation of the main and mechanical mezzanine, that work has been completed, and they are fully installed. Concrete slab on the main mezzanine area and bus wash roof, that has been installed as well. Installation of metal stud walls and drywall on the first and second floors, that work is ongoing. MEP rough-in installation of metal studs, overhead and mechanical rooms, that work has been completed. And the underslab electrical and plumbing work in the main areas and preparation for the poured concrete slabs. We are ready to go. We're actually going to pour the north side. I wrote the south side, but the north side is going to be poured as of the 28th, so we'll let it cure, and when we come back from the break, we'll be able to actually go on that half of the floor. The switchgear installation in the electrical room, that work is ongoing. All the wire is pulled, and the steel detailing work is also ongoing. We have about 8 or 9 guys who are been working diligently just to enclose everything up and do all the detailing work at this point. So here are a few photos. This is the second floor decking. So this is the mezzanine area, the upper level, which has been completed, and the concrete has been poured, and we're actually building walls and putting in drywall at this point. And this is where the bus drivers and their main area is going to be up on the second floor. Here's a photo of the upper mezzanine area where we actually poured the concrete and doing their finishes. Second floor framing, so all the metal stud work, and again, these have been completed, and we're actually drywalling the second floor at this point. And here's a look from below, looking up at the mezzanine area, so you can appreciate the height and how nice it's going to be for the facility for the workers in this facility. There you go. This is the mechanical mezzanine area, so you can see that the equipment has been installed. Actually, on the lower section, it's been installed, and we're actually welding in all the gas pipe work now. Here is the fuel island canopy, and you can see the pumps, and the number of the pumps is actually the same as what was before. So we're completing the fuel island, and we have a little bit more work to complete. We put in a fire suppression system, so that's already installed, and a lighting package has been installed as well. Here's a shot of the concrete slab and the pumps. We just finished the gutter system. The laterals have been installed, so that work has been completed. Here's a nice shot of the front of the building. It's been cleaned up a little bit more, but you can appreciate these guys working up on a high lulls in order to encapsulate the building and close it off. We do have everything enclosed, and we do have temporary heat inside the building, so it's quite comfortable inside for these guys to work now. And that's pretty much it on my end. Does anybody have any questions? Well, that was easy tonight. Well, happy holidays and Merry Christmas to all. Thank you.
You as well, thank you. So new to us, I'm just sorry going to it, but we have the enrollment projections, right?
So I'd like to have Dr. Richard Grip come forward from Statistical Forecast. We engaged in a contract with Dr. Grip as we were going through our strategic planning and our enrollment studies that we have been using. There's so many important decisions to be made that we needed to make sure that we were, measuring twice and cutting once. And I'm looking forward to hearing this formal presentation, as I know the board is, as it really tells a story on future projections. Dr. Grip.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I will say that the presentation...
Is your microphone on? There should be a blue light.
Press. There's a blue light. Not here? Can you hear me now? Well, it was a green light. Okay. I don't know why it was off. The presentation tonight will probably last about 20 minutes. So I'd ask that if you have any questions for the board, if you just hold on to the end, there's a good chance that I might be able to answer them in the middle of the presentation. So I represent statistical forecasting coming from Vermont. So it's about 5 hours dead east of here in a town called Dorset. If you happen to ski...
where are you from?
I was married at the Barrow's house.
No way. We'll talk later. So that's really funny. I'll remember that one. So our town is really not near much of anything except maybe a town named Manchester, which maybe some of you know, near the ski mountains of Bromley and Stratton. But my company actually did not originate in Vermont. I'm actually originally from New Jersey and started the company down there and moved it north. And most of the work that my company does is strictly in this little niche field of something called school demography. There's only probably about 100 of us in the whole country that do this kind of work. It's really something you don't hear about too much. Most of the clients in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, although we stretch as far down as to Virginia and come out this way as well. Many demographic studies have been done, more than 150 plus for different districts. Our biggest news, I guess, is that we publish is that we're the demographic consultant for the New York City Public Schools. We do all their enrollment projections, not only their projections, but a lot of other studies on their immigration patterns, charter schools. They're the largest school district in the country, and we've been doing that since 2006. But then we work with schools that are literally 85 students, so it really runs the gamut. My background, it started out as a civil engineer, hated that so much, I always wanted to teach. So I taught for 10 years in mostly at the secondary level, teaching high school physics, AP physics, and stats, and a little bit at the Graduate School of Ed at Rutgers. For about 10 years I did that, and as I'm in the process of going for my dissertation at Rutgers at the Graduate School of Education in Ed Stat and Measurement, I didn't know what to do for my thesis, and the superintendent of schools at the time said, why don't you try something in this field in your dissertation in school demography? I didn't even wouldn't even know what it was. Lo and behold, I did what's called multiple regression modeling of enrollment projections, and that was my thesis, and 20 years later, here I am. So thank you, Dr. McGarry, wherever you are. But he was an inspiration to get me in that path. So most of us that wind up with an Ed Stat and Measurements degree, we work for typically ETS or the College Board, working on things with reliability and validity issues with testing, but that's not the path I wanted to choose. I published a lot nationally on different topics with respect to school demography. In fact, my daughter and I have a co-paper that's been preliminarily accepted, and she's a student at U of R in the math department. And I testify in New Jersey a lot as an expert witness in school demography. In that particular state, if two school districts are joined in some way, maybe in a sending-receiving agreement, maybe one school district sends their high school students to another, you just can't get up and walk out with your students. You have to divorce each other through the courts, and I come in and look at racial impacts and things like that. So let's talk about the study. Most people think when we do a demographic study, it's strictly about enrollment projections, but that's really not the case. There's so many other things that have to be looked at because the enrollment projections are really the end product, but there's many things that happen in the, as a foundation to get you to that point. So in this study, enrollments were projected for a 5-year period from the 1920 year out to 23-24. And the first question I always get from people is, can you possibly project out more than 5 years? Can you go out 10, maybe 15, something like that? And the answer that I tell them is this. The problem that we have is that if you start looking at a 10-year period, now you're talking about the 28-29 school year. Well, kindergarten kids for that particular year would be born 5 years prior, which would be the 2023 year. Well, that's not for another 5 years. So we then start projecting birth rates. In communities such as yours, it's a very difficult thing to do because we need two things to do that. We need to know how many women are going to be in childbearing ages down the road, which is a hard thing to estimate based on migration and death rates and whatnot. And that's the reason we don't do those kinds of 10-year projections at a smaller level of geography. We do it for New York City, but they're much, much larger. There's much more confidence in our numbers. The next thing we looked at in this study is your historical enrollments, birth and fertility rates, the structure of your communities in terms of population trends and age structure. Very interesting things going on here. I'll show you in a minute. Impact of new developments on enrollment. And the last piece that we looked at, there were many different options the school board could pick from. So the couple options were also to look at student residence is from the 13, 14, the 18, 19 year, putting them on a map. Seeing where people live. Has the relative concentration of where people live changed over the 5-year period? Is there anything different that's happened over that time? So that's also going to be shown here tonight as well. So this is just a highlight of, first I look at the macro, which is more or less your communities. So when it says Fairport Central School District attendance area, this really just means it's not really just talking about Parenton, the whole town, and Fairport Village. It's really just the geographical area that sends into this particular school district. So I'll just run down a couple of different data points. You'll hear me talk about a couple things. There's the 2000 census, the 2010 census, which of course is done every 10 years, and something called the American Community Survey. So in the 12-16 ACS, American Community Survey, there were about 40,000 people in the geographic area. The ACS is done in the intercensus years. And it's just a 5-year conglomeration of data. It's not representing a single point in time, but it's looking at a 1% sample of data per year from 12 to 16, which is a 5% sample of the data, which is very small. But really this community, as I'll refer to it as, has really not changed in population from 2000, roughly about 40,000 people back 18 years ago. It's very, very white. 93% white, really hasn't changed since 2000. The median age is somewhat old, around 45 compared to Monroe County, which is 39. Very small foreign-born population. The largest people who are foreign-born come from China or India. Very educated, in my opinion. Bachelor's degree or higher is 55% compared to Monroe County, which is 37%. Of course, a lot of this data for the county is being skewed one way or the other based upon Rochester. Median family income is near 100,000. The county is about 70. There is almost about 17,000 housing units. More than 3/4 are one unit, single family attached or detached, and about 1/4 are renter occupied. And the median value of an owner-occupied unit is about 188,000. Again, median, 50% of the homes have a value greater than that, 50% less than that. So this is just a map showing all the locations of the schools. Very hard to see from that particular, if you're not really looking up close. But the blue lines that you're seeing here all the way around, that's for the school district, and you can see the neighboring school district boundaries to the left, right, top, and bottom. So let's talk about your school district now. Let's get away from the macro and head down to the micro. The enrollment as of October 1st, which is your so-called BEDS day, that's the enrollment day that you send your enrollment into the state, was about 5,700 students. Now, in the report, I look at your enrollment trends for the past decade. But since it had been declining all those years, I went back a little further into the archives to find out when was the last time you actually had a gain in enrollment. So you've been declining since the 06-07 year, which is for 12 consecutive years. And over the last decade, you've lost more than 930 students, which is it's a 14% decline. That's pretty significant. The cohort survival ratio method is how we project enrollments. I'll talk about that in a moment. But just to give you an idea, that's what was used to project five years into the future. It's been around for, I think, about 70 or 80 years. So that's just a picture of your enrollment. You can see the sharp decline heading downward since the last decade. And that's K-12. As I'm going to try to say just about every time I come to presentations for a district, I say, look at this graph and try to put that in your brain. If you're going to fall asleep during anything else in the presentation, that's fine, but don't fall asleep during this slide. And the reason I say that is because this is going to break down your enrollments by elementary, middle, and high. And I call this the window to the future slide, because what happens here, if you can take a look up at the top, the elementary is in blue. The elementary declined through, I think, about the 14-15 year. But it's been stable for the last 5 years. When we see declining enrollment in the elementary level, what we usually see is then, in time, those smaller cohorts will move up to the middle and high school, causing those to decline as well. So if I see stabilization in the last 5 years in the elementary cohort, you know what you're thinking, right? There has to be some stabilization going to happen in the future at the middle school level, and eventually, way down the line perhaps, at the high school level. So take a look at the middle school. It had been declining. It looks like in the last 3 years, the enrollment's been almost constant. That's because of that stabilization occurring at the elementary prior, and those kids are now moving up to the middle. The high school, which is in the middle, has been declining the whole time. But just keep that in your head, and now you're going to see what's going to happen as we go into the future. So I also look at non-public school enrollments, because it's kind of interesting to see, you know, based upon your community, are you getting a lot of students that are going elsewhere? Now, you've had declining enrollment, but what's really interesting is that the non-public population, the students who live in this geographic area, it's been pretty stable in the number of kids that have been going to parochially or some kind of private school. 431 kids attended non-public schools in the 17-18 year. That's the most recent data we had, which represents about 7% of the population. And for the last 4 years, that range of students has ranged between 431 to 460, which I kind of think is fairly stable. So in the most recent year, 2/3 of those students attended one of 5 schools, and you can see the list up there: McQuaid, Jesuit, Our Lady of Mercy High School, so on and so forth. Those are the biggest receivers of students that are in the non-public domain. I think the first two, if I look them up online, one's the all-boys high school and the one's an all-girls high school, right? So, really briefly, this will definitely put you to sleep. So this is the methodology of how you project enrollments. And I'm just going to go through it really just briefly so you have an idea what's going on, so it's not magic and hocus pocus. But what we're doing is we're calculating what's called a progression rate, or a survival ratio from one grade to the next historically. So I'll give you a simple example. If you have 100 first graders in the 17-18 year, and the next year, this year, you only get 95 second graders, the survival rate, or the progression rate, is 95 over 100, which is 0.95. We compute these survival ratios for about a 10-year historical period to see what kind of patterns there are from one grade to the next. And we do this not only from grade 1 to 2 all the way up through 11, 12, but we also do it from birth to kindergarten, which is a 5-year gap. What's interesting is when I took the 5-year average, 9 of the 13 ratios, there's 13 because you got to count birth to K, were above 1. If you have values that are above 1, that means you have inward migration, you're gaining students in the net. Below 1, you're losing. So how in the world can you have more of the ratios above 1, which would mean inward migration, which means increasing students coming in, yet you're declining in enrollment? All right, that should be the first thought in your head. It doesn't make sense. I'll show you why in a moment. Okay, so basically what we use is an average ratio from like the last 5 years projected on the most current enrollment from the 18-19 year, assuming that those ratios are going to hold constant through the whole entire projection period. That's basically how we do this thing. The reason why you're having so much difficulty with declining enrollment is this phenomenon right there. It's called kindergarten replacement. And you've had negative kindergarten replacement for the last 9 years. Really all it is that the number of graduating 12th grade students is more than what replaces them in kindergarten the next year. So I'm going to give you a really easy example. If you graduate 500 12th graders, just to keep everything equal, you need 500 kindergarten students the next year to balance out your enrollment. But if you only get 300 kindergarten students, you're down 200 students right out of the gate. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, when we look at ratios with all the other grades, like K to 1, 1 to 2, they're usually very close to 1, either plus or minus. So even if you're having inward migration for some of those other grades, it's not typically enough to overcome that phenomena. And the grade level, the grade ratios that we see the most change around, differing from 1, is birth to kindergarten, K to 1 if it's a half-day kindergarten program for a district, because some students would come from private programs for maybe a private full-day kindergarten, and grade 8 to 9. And it could be above 1 or below 1 depending upon the reputation of the high school. All those other grades, darn close to 1. So the district has lost an average of 91 students the last 4 years. There's a plot of your negative kindergarten replacement for the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, you see there you lost 210 students. That's almost impossible to overcome in the course of your enrollment. It's gotten lower in the last 4 years. It's averaging, like I said, about 91. Take a look at this chart. This takes a look at your kindergarten replacement matched up against your enrollment change, just the difference from 1 year to the next. And you can see there's a really high correlation between the two. So if you're losing 87 or 99 kids in the last year, 87 you can see was due to kindergarten replacement. If the blue line is closer to the 0 degrees up toward the x-axis, that's due to inward migration. So you are gaining some kids, so the blue value is your net enrollment change, but it's just not enough inward migration to overcome the negative kindergarten replacement. So why does negative kindergarten replacement happen? Let's go down to the next level. It's births, birth counts. Births are used to project kindergarten students 5 years later. You've had a declining birth rate in this area since from 2004 to 11, but then it's stabilized. And I got all this data from the Department of Health, which actually collects birth data by the school district's attendance area. So births have been stable for the last 5 years, ranging between 341 to 373. That's good news. No school district can decline forever. It's not possible. We can't go down to 0. Something has to change. The stabilization of the birth rate is going to change things here. Fertility rates are incredibly low here. Don't know what's going on, women, but we have only 29 births per 1,000 women of childbearing age. That's usually ages 15 to 49, according to the census. Much lower than the county at 41 or the state at 46. Here's the number of births by year from 2004 to 16, and the number of kindergarten students 5 years later. There is a correlation, but what's interesting here is that in the last 4 years, your B to K ratios have been going up. That's why they're in red. So what it means, just in the most recent year, you had 352 kids born, but 402 kids showed up right now in kindergarten. So you gained 50 extra kids. Why is that? Well, a lot of it has to do with home sales, resales. There's been a lot of resale activity, and you're going to see that on another slide. If parents are moving in with kids in tow under the age of 5, they're born somewhere else, but they will show up on your doorstep and will be registered in the enrollment counts, showing that ratio higher than 1. So there's your birth counts. It was declining. Take a look down to the 2011 year, 332 births, but now it's pretty stable. Okay, I love talking about this. This is called an age pyramid. or an age-sex diagram. It's Demography 101. Look up Japan's age-sex diagram when you're bored sometime, and you'll see some really cool stuff because they are very, very old, and you probably heard some of the challenges they're having over there. But this is the age pyramid for the attendance area back in 2000. And the greatest number of people, what it is, real simple, just so I'll give you a background. Males are on the left-hand side in orange, females are on the right-hand side in green. It's a plot of the number of males and females for 5-year intervals for ages, all the way up to 85 plus. And of course, at the top, you see that there's more females than males because they live longer than us, and that's why you see a bigger bar there. But what's interesting about this is that the biggest segment of the whole population is the 40 to 44 group. There's not too many people in the 20s. That's a problem, okay? I usually see this in districts that really have high socioeconomics, with really high salaries typically, or very high property taxes where younger people can't move in because they're boxed out. This is what it looks like 10 years later. Just keep an eye, I'll toggle back and forth. You see how it moved up? Because now the biggest group is 45 to 49. And it's kind of neat. But now it's a little bit more filled out in the 20 region. But if you did a whole plot of the state of New York, or even Monroe County for that matter, the whole 20s and 30s, instead of having a bite taken out of it like a bite out of an apple there, it would all be filled in. So this is common in communities that are not too heterogeneous. They need to be more heterogeneous both in economics and race to see that more filled out pattern that I'm talking about. So this is what's happened over the last 10 years. It's showing a chart of how many males and females have declined, the amount of males and females, numerical and percentage point change from the last 10 years. And of course, I don't have better data than 2010. The census hasn't happened until 2020, obviously. It won't happen until then. But what we're seeing here, at least I don't really care so much about the males, but take a look over at the females. The biggest decliners, which is in red there, is the 40 to 44 population, but take a look right above that, the 30 to 34 and the 35 to 39. And guess what? That's where most females nowadays are having their births, right in that age group. So because of that, and because of the low fertility rates, that has what led to the birth decline between 2000 and 2010 in this area. In blue is the biggest gainers over the 10-year period, which is the 60 to 64 population. I do know there's a lot of age-restricted housing that came online. That could be part of it. I contacted Perrington and Fairport's planning and zoning departments to find out what new residential housing is coming up. And there's 124 homes, some multifamily, some single family, mostly in Perrington. Nothing, I mean, most Magnolia Manor's been going on for quite some time, from what I understand. So we try to figure out how many students could come out of those 124 units. And there's a resource called eConsult Solutions. They're based out of Pennsylvania. They provide us what's called multipliers, or the number of students per housing unit for every state in the country. So it's not particular and unique to your community, but it'll give us a rough idea how many children to expect. We expect the most out of detached single-family homes and smallest for apartments and townhouses and condos. Excuse me, a total of 48 public school children are projected, and there's the breakdown for the 5 communities that are mentioned. Homes built by decade, it's just showing you the type of housing stock you have here. Most of them were in the 1970s that were built. I think it was that's roughly about a quarter, if I recall, of the number of housing units. This is showing home sales in the attendance area. Single family in orange, red is the condos, but really what you want to look at is the light blue, and it's showing the total. So take a look and see how much it declined around the 2009-10 period, which correspond, if you recall, with the banking and financial crises. This is not unique to you. I see this in every single community I work with. The number of home sales just plummets around 2008. But if you look to the far right, you can see that your home sales have really picked up. And that's what I attribute to the birth to kindergarten ratio going up. So historically, Perrington has had the most number of building permits and activity, 233 permits over the last 5 years. I did contact Fairport Village as well. They didn't have computerized records, but it wasn't that much compared to Perrington. It's in the report. So this is the enrollment projections, which is what you want to know. This is the K-12 total population. So remember, I said the current enrollment is 5,703. So it's projected to decline for the next 2 years, but then hold fairly stable for the rest of the projection period. So by the end of, what is that, 23, 24, we're talking about a loss of 80 students compared to today, which is really nominal. Why? Well, look, your kindergarten replacement is really going to change because, in my opinion, what's going to happen is the size of the exiting 12th grade cohorts are going to get smaller due to the fact that smaller cohorts are moving through the system. So they're going to be roughly about the same size of the people, the kindergarten students coming into the system. So you won't have this gigantic negative kindergarten replacement to overcome all the time, and that's what you're seeing in about 3 years' time. Here's the projected enrollment by configuration. Notice I'm actually projecting a little bit of a slight increase in the elementary population. It's been stable, like I said, for the last 5 years. Really stable again at the middle school level. If you recall, it was been stable for the last 3 years. A decline at the high school because those smaller cohorts have to move through the system. But if you're thinking like me, you know what's going to happen down the line. The stability is going to move up through the system, and eventually, somewhere out there, it's going to stabilize the high school enrollment as well. So really quick, this is the last part of the presentation. Maps were created to compare student residential locations at 2 different time frames, 13, 14, 18, 19 year. And what I did is I plotted the student addresses on a map, and then I aggregated them by census block. Census block is the tiniest geographical area that the census creates. And the student density, because different blocks are of different size, we actually divide it by the square mile of the block so that we kind of can compare apples to apples. Student yield by block is the number of kids per housing unit in a block. So here's your geographical area. I'm going to use the same scale for the 18-19 year. Notice that the reds and oranges would be the greatest number of students. So in the northwest corner or northwest area of your geographical area is the greatest number of students. And that really doesn't change from the 18-19 year. I'll toggle back and forth. The colors pretty much stay the same. So this graph here just divides by the block's geographical area. Red is the greatest density of students, and again up in the northwest. Oranges, if you see some, that's also a great large density. It does change a little bit over time if you toggle back and forth. And the last one here is the student yield by census block, or number of kids. Where's the greatest number of kids per housing unit? And that's up in the northern part. It's barely seen. You can see it up there. That's where it was in 13-14. The 18-19 year, it shifts over to the northwest section. But again, orange is also another big number of kids per housing unit. So that's mostly on the eastern side of the geographical area. You see those orange blocks in the north and the southern parts. Okay, last, the summary, if you want a snapshot of what this whole presentation was about. So I'm projecting enrollments to be slightly lower at the end of the 5-year projection period, but it's mostly due to the decline at the high school level. Birth counts and elementary enrollments have stabilized, and that's really important for your thinking going forward. The declining enrollment that you've seen in this 12, 13-year period, it's going to be coming to an end soon. Declining enrollment at the high school is due to smaller elementary and middle school cohorts advancing into the upper grades. That's the reason why I'm still projecting small enrollment at that level. And with that, I will turn it over to the board for questions.
Can you repeat that, please? Oh, that was great.
I can't believe you were married at the Barrows house. I have to wrap my head around that.
Well, my family's from Manchester, so
oh,
jeez. But anyway, this is awesome, really comprehensive. My question would be macroeconomic situations of Western New York, Monroe County, and then Perrington and the surrounding counties. I mean, understanding that we have employment, we have major employers, are those employers growing or shrinking, and what's the impact on the overall community? What do you see for Western New York as opposed, like there's the northeastern part of the U.S. as opposed to the southeast or the southwest? Population shifts, economics. Do you see that playing a part in our enrollment trends?
So let me explain to you the methodology of that, and that'll help explain. So when we do projections, we don't do forecasts. There is a difference. So we don't take a look at what economic indicators could happen in the future. In other words, if an employer left the area, what would that do to the community? What would it do to the school district? We're looking at past trends and more or less taking those and projecting them into the future. That's the difference between a forecast. And so to answer your question, no, I haven't. Because the number one indicator and predictor of future enrollment in any school district, this is based on my dissertation, is historical enrollment in a district. Even with all the other stuff that could be happening, floating around out there, it's still the biggest one. Of course, if we had a nuclear bomb or something like that, of course, anything, or a community or a company leaves the community, anything can happen. But of course, this is assuming everything's going to hold status quo.
Okay, great, thanks.
It's a lot to process.
So I to simplify, you shared that we're achieving, we're getting out of this declining trend and we're going to be leveling out. And you said that, around that 56 plus, that's where we're leveling out to, based upon the projections. And,
Correct.
When we have lower kindergarten enrollments, you could project that all the way through. I mean, you see the differential when we were at 500. Even beyond that, but now we're at like 400.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying we're going to be in that little sweet spot between 440-ish, right?
For kindergarten, yes.
Yeah, as we move through. Yep. And then you'll see that move through.
Yeah, and it's hard to say what would happen in terms of, way down for kindergarten, but I don't see births really spiking. We talk about countrywide patterns. The 2020 year, 25 year, we're assuming that the grandchildren of the baby boomers are going to start having their kids. Whether that actually happens or not, I don't know. They could be living still in their parents' basement. But if it does happen, there'll be a tick up in the birth rate, but it's probably not going to be affecting most districts for quite to the end of the 2020 decade. So to answer your question, you're going to be in that area for a while.
And those survival ratios, that 1.0, a little bit beyond that, that's a positive indicator that you were saying.
Yeah, and usually I see it in districts that are high performing because people want to go to high performing districts. So
that's what I was trying to get out of you.
Yeah, you could have asked me at point blank. No, that's definitely what it means.
Great superintendents.
Well.
I think that's an interesting graph right there, and I'm looking at the age pyramids. And you showed how the trends from 2000 to 2010 are, we're getting older as a district. But even that's not sustainable forever, right?
Nope. Eventually, that's going to have to turn over as well. They had 2000 to 2010. But, again, these things take time. And another question I get from a lot of boards is, well, look at that age pyramid. That must mean that there's a lot of folks who are in their 50s and 60s want to sell their home, and they're all going to sell at once. And then people are going to buy in with kids, and you're going to have this crush in the school. It doesn't happen that way. It's really a very gradual thing. It happens over time. I do a lot of research on length of ownership of homes, and for homes that are owned about 30 or 35 years, the average turnover rate is sometimes less than 2% of homes that are owned that many years. And even in good economies and bad economies, we don't see this crush of people leaving. And the number one reason that you can read AARP, if you don't believe me, is because of families. People want to stay close to their families. And that's one of the biggest reasons why you don't see this crush of, and then community involvement was the second one, is that they're very involved in their churches, their civic organizations, whatever. And that's what keeps people in that age group here. It's very interesting, actually.
So I'm looking at the age graph for different reasons. You mentioned that you see it for those communities that are not very heterogeneous. And so how do we make ourselves more attractive to be a heterogeneous
I'm
community?
not going down that road. No, I don't really know. That's hard. I mean,
I know the zoning law's been in place for long enough and other things, but it's, that's the question that kind of begs to be asked.
you know,
That was an interesting slide when you said that it's different demographically, and that we do know that we're very, very whatever's the word that means we're alike.
you're more homogeneous.
Homogeneous. I knew it was homo, but I didn't want to go to the next part after that. At any rate, how do we, I don't know that we do this, but I just look at that bite of the apple in the 25s and 30s and say, people can't afford to move to Fairport at that age. They're still grappling with college loans. They're still grappling with those that are college educated. They're still grappling with their first place to buy, and they're often still in apartments. And this is an attendance area that says, do we not have enough apartments? Is that what you're saying, that that's what would round it out more?
You know, it really varies. I grew up in a community very similar to this, and it's changing markedly right now. It was probably about 90% white when I grew up, and this is a town right out 5 miles outside of Manhattan. Right now, it's predominantly getting to be more Asian Indian. And what happens is you start getting people moving in of certain ethnic groups. If they take hold, and then there are other families that may know them or relatives, they feel more comfortable moving in. So, you know, it could happen eventually. It could be also they're priced out, and that's a market factor you can't control.
No.
You know, and it could be, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be apartments or affordable apartments or market rate apartments. There's a whole litany of factors of why people congregate where they are. For instance, my wife is from Guyana, and there's a strong Guyanese community not only in Toronto, but in Queens. Of the portions, they're fourth largest in minority in all of New York City. And they congregate where there's like people like them. So, you know, I think the ball starts rolling, they'll get there all together, but it's a complicated process.
Well, you know, we do have very high taxes, and you talked about the 3/4 of the homes are single-family homes, and the median price is $188K. That's a certain level of income you have to be able to just to afford to pay the taxes on those homes. So I imagine that somewhat determines the type of community you have.
Absolutely.
We also have Fairport Electric, which I don't know if you know, the local power utility company, which are pretty good rates. So I think people stay here for that as well. That's one of the factors. But, you know, a lot of the things you talked about are, you know, as indicative of this type of data is pretty much spot on for the community that we have.
So stabilization is on the horizon.
Yes, sir.
Predictability, right?
Yeah, that's definitely.
I think that's the moral, or the.
Yeah.
the big
I've used that
takeaway.
word a few times tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it makes our planning a little bit more succinct, right?
Yep. Dr. Grip, I really appreciate your time. Ms. Hill will walk with you and show you, unless you want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're welcome to, but.
Thanks.
We'll definitely be in touch. Good luck with your travel back, and
Thank you.
happy holidays.
Yes, you too.
Really
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have our last, I'm not sure it's presentation as much as discussion, and I think, Brett, we had discussed that by mid-January, if I'm right, the adoption of the 21st Century Vision Statement for what we want to accomplish this year in other areas, right, of our long-term plan and everything, and getting that in place. So, time to look at our first draft, right? Is that, oh, it is. So it's up there for those who want to see it. They'll see, I have a hard copy. Does everybody have a hard copy? I know I have one for me. So there we go.
Yeah, we just need to make a correction. That's breeding grounds, not breeding grounds. Just an observation.
Are you sure? Well, apparently it's spelled correctly, because the spell checker didn't pick it up. It's just the wrong word you're saying.
Yeah, if there were a chicken involved, we'd be fine.
Chicken?
This was interesting endeavor. We had this community forum, right? And Brett showed part of that with the students. It was a really good evening. A lot of great information shared. I've had some other feedback from people who had attended. One who came in, he admitted to me just this past Sunday, came in a skeptic and walked out a believer, and wants us to follow everything that our guest speaker had said, right? And I was happy to hear that, because, you know, sometimes some people will interpret it as fluff, but there's a lot of reality in what it will do for just children and education. But how do we translate that into a vision statement? So anyway, don't be shy, people.
I like it a lot, first of all. Thank you. The couple of things I thought may be worth considering as additions in today's day and age, and I think in the world that we live in the future, the ability to discern truth, right?
That's part of the seemingly information so easily accessed, but you don't know if it's
I
accurate.
mean, we're all bombarded
Right.
with information, but what's true and factual and what's not, right? I think that's an important aspect of growth. And then also, what I wrote down is, I'm not sure these words are appropriate, but growth through failure. So, you know, some people define that as grit, but understanding that experiments and exercises have negative outcomes, but do we have the ability to learn from that and grow?
Right.
Is that piece that we've written down as support in areas of weakness?
I think
Go
it's-
through failure, I mean.
Well, it's, yeah, certainly similar to that.
Yeah, it's just more direct, right?
Yep.
And how do you create a culture or an environment where you celebrate failure? I don't know if many of you have ever seen Meet the Robinsons. It's just a funny Walt Disney movie, but they do applaud every time there's a failure, and they have a little party around it in the cartoon. I just kind of love that idea, right? An invention that failed. Yeah, thanks for trying. Because if we don't have that, then we're not going to try, right? The youth won't try.
Support in areas of weakness, to me, is, I like it, but it's empathy, compassion, not necessarily daring to try and fail, and being confident through that
Daring.
manner.
Well, there's a good phrase, so daring to try. Come on, educators. No pressure, Mark.
No pressure, no. And that's not even how I'm thinking. I'm thinking more about what we talked about earlier tonight in terms of diversity. And so in that middle paragraph, I would like to see something about being comfortable across cultures. You know, I would like our graduates, including my own grandchildren, to feel comfortable in heterogeneous communities, whether we're talking about race, religion, socioeconomic, but just to have an understanding and appreciation of different backgrounds and feeling comfortable and fluent in interacting in them.
Right.
I think that these are great. When I heard that gentleman the other night speaking, I came back, I was like really jazzed, and then reality set in, and I said, how do you know that you're doing these things? We live in a world that wants to put data points on things. We live in a world that wants to make sure that you're going to get, we know how many of our students pick any one of those lines, pick any one of those visions. How do we prove that there's a joy of learning? Do you know what I'm saying? We just live in an era where everyone wants to know how many of your students passed the tests, whichever test it was, however you define passing. And I love what I'm reading here. And maybe it's just because we've always been told Fairport we are a little ahead of the game in terms of how people educate their kids, in terms of what we want. But this is so soft and I love it so much. The question was, how do we know that we're doing these things?
So, right, so I'm writing down, do we want as part of our statement,
I
something
don't
like that?
know.
How to monitor and gauge our success, our progress, monitor our progress, gauge our successes?
You know-
'Cause I think that's right. I struggle with the vision statement. The word statement to me maybe said like it's one or two sentences, and then it's realized, I don't think we could do that for a 21st century.
Well, we got dots, that always helps.
Yeah, right, thank you, that's exactly the idea. But, so that was a struggle, but I think that's an excellent point, how to monitor ourselves along the way, and gauge our success. If we get off track, how we get back on track.
I was thinking here, we have joy of learning, and I might want to add to that, say, joy of learning, performing, and creating. And, that has to do with, being connected to lots of different things, not just the classroom, but clubs and.
No, you're right, yeah, that's great.
And perhaps not just learning, but teaching, because our students teach each other, and they work together, and they collaborate.
The other part that's missing here, and at each child, every child, whole child, is the partnership that we have with our communities, with our parents. This is not just what the schools are going to be doing, but this is what our whole community has to be a part of. And it's, again, is how do you make this a reality? And that's a tough, tough question. How do you know that that's happening?
So, but what are you saying
I don't
there?
know.
No, I mean, meaning, are you trying to expand this to a wider community or beyond the school district itself, which it would have to be, I think we can only be successful to the degree our community wants these attributes. And but can we influence the community, or is it the other way around, right? Chicken or egg?
We're back to breeding grounds.
Could be fish, too.
I think also somewhere in our successes, we should have something that talks about students. I mean, we keep reading about how, and Dr. Dillon kept pointing to also how people don't engage together. They're online, we might want to have something in there about that our students can engage with each other. I'd like to say face-to-face, but somehow put that together, that,
Collaboration, cooperation?
Yeah.
Communication.
Ooh, the 3 Cs, can we put all three?
More than on Google Docs, but looking each other in the eye kind of communication. They have a lot of communication, but it's this kind.
Right. Remember the speaker whose name I don't recall, who sat in the middle, talked about conversational ability.
Conversational intelligence.
Intelligence, thank you, yes.
Very
And that was
It's got a draft on it. Are we hoping to vote on this tonight?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Because I just was hearing that we're making changes as we go along. Okay, what's the future of
That's
this
because I can't read my
statement?
handwriting. I wrote a lot of things down, but if I don't type it right now, I won't read it later. What would you? What else? You've taken a couple deep breaths. Am I allowed to put you on the spot?
Absolutely. I appreciate this I appreciate this conversation. A good, strong vision, mobilizes and streamlines our expectations. The community has expectations through our District Advisory Council about creating flexible and responsive learning environments. So it doesn't matter where you are, it can be turned into a learning station, whether it's, you know, in room 512, or whether it's in a new lab, or not necessarily a lab setting, or out on the playing fields. You know, having the right resources allocated to support flexible and responsive environments. And I have to say that, you know, I've been really thinking about our conversations on diversity and being fluid in those conversations, and the term, you know, culturally and linguistically responsive learning environments as we build educational programming, as we talk about engaging with you know, students, not just in Fairport, but beyond. You know, we need to really make sure that we're ready to have those conversations and be fluent in interacting with all different types of humans, for sure.
Okay, right. Flexible, responsible learning environment, so cultural, linguistic responsiveness, it's goes across with yours, Marty, right? So I think it goes with what you're saying, though, right? Comfortable and cross-cultural or heterogeneous.
Could, with the board's permission, bring it back to the admin team, and we could, you know, continue to look at it and, you know, continue to give, you know, thoughts from that perspective, and that will just be a volley to probably reiterate a lot of the things that are on here, or if there's a different thought. We have experts in our STEM world and our humanities world, you know, that can really provide some great perspective, if that's okay with the board as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we do have an upcoming retreat where we can toss around any other thoughts and things that we might want to jump in, put in there.
Yeah, good. So is that good for now? We'll give it to Brett. Do you want these with the notes? I can send it.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And then I'm not going to do much more formatting necessarily. They'll have the other ideas that were shared. Or is that okay?
It's a great rough draft.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, well then, to our discussion action items, budget goals, which may be just as much discussion, more so. Are those able to be brought up? Did we have those for presentation? They're inbox. We don't have a hard copy in front of us, do we?
Oh, they should be up.
There they are.
There they are.
I don't
Yep.
know if
Sorry about
anybody
that.
can read that, or with the kink in your neck.
Oh, that.
So we should technically have a motion to approve and then do the discussion. So motion, anyone? No one? Maureen, second? Marty? Okay, discussion?
I'm excited about these because it is December early in this process of our budget, and I'm proud of the board's efforts to engage in conversations with the multiple different groups, listening to different staff members at this point. And you know, the budget tells a story, and I think if you take a look at these expectations and goals from our District Advisory Council to our district advisement teams that are out there and board conversations, it reiterates, and it's a reflection or a silhouette of that story. So I appreciate the work that's been going into this as we came to this moment, or as we come to this moment, excuse me.
So is the second bullet point coming from an audit and finance committee member who helped draft these for the board, right, the three of us. But it seems like that, the allocate of 1%, is that more a how-to for the maintenance of aging facilities? Or what we're going to do? Is it, I like it as a goal per se, but are those combined?
So if you take a look at allocate up to 1% of our annual budget on identified needs via the building condition survey. We've been spending a lot of time on the building condition survey, the maintenance and mechanical components that need to be maintained as a real live entity. And we parallel that with the expectations of the community of being transparent and making sure that we take care of our resources and investments here. That bullet there speaks to that commitment in being responsive to the community's expectations and feedback as well. Did that answer your question, or?
I guess so.
So if you take a look at this one, is that what you're saying?
Right.
They're redundant. They're redundant.
Somewhat redundant, but we specifically on the audit finance committee wanted to put some more target related to the budget, so I don't know. I mean, I think just thinking of how do we combine that then so that it's also a little bit more specific. Not just, we need to maintain them, that's easy enough goal, but we want to target up to 1% of our budget, right, to do that.
I like the range that's here right now. I think when we get closer, this is the draft, when we get closer to seeing the budget, we also are going to look and say, what's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck when it comes to maintaining our facilities, when it comes to whatever we need to do? Because if we're going to spend 0.5% of our money, that better be something really significant. Maybe we have a little bit more room, because we've said we've tended to ignore certain things. What is it that we've ignored and at what cost? That's always a concern. So I like the concept right now of having a little bit of a opening.
But that 1%, I understand what you're saying, how it seems a little redundant, but to me, that was about transparency as well. That's why it was a separate bullet, because, again, making sure that right up front, we're identifying priority items, and we're talking about them and putting them in the budget from
it's rather than getting the late spring shopping list of things that we're going to do with our excess budget, it's saying we're in a line item that at the beginning of the budget process, and say if we have a $130 million budget, 1.3 million is going to be targeted, up to 1.3 million is going to be targeted. But it's also it's also establishing a cap, Brett, and saying that we're not going to use 2 million, we're not going to use 2.5 million.
Or 3%.
Or 3%, unless, but I don't think we're binding ourselves. If we have an emergency that we have to do that, then we'll do it. But it's a target, I think, is good for predictability. Laying it out there.
Yeah, I like having a percent, I like having a range. I just don't want to be redundant, that's only the point of it, right?
Yes, I understand that, and if there's a way to combine them, that would, but again, they're two separate ideas. One is about being upfront and putting it in so we can let people know this is a priority, and the other one is, making sure that we continue to,
that it is a focus, as it should, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Also kind of gives the maintenance people something to plan around. They can triage and prioritize what they want to have done. They realize that there are funds available to do it, right?
Correct.
More purposeful than we've ever done, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So my question, just looking over Joyce's shoulder here, but I have looked at these before, is would it be under that first bullet of the first item where we would fit in the conversation that we've had about right-sizing the class size? Because we've had those conversations, but I don't really see that first sub-bullet as the main one that I see about, that could apply to that.
Well,
Just to be sure that we hold that as a priority. I know that we do in discussion, but I don't want it to get lost.
By not having it as a goal, right?
Well,
I thought it was the
I
third
think
dot.
it is a goal. but-
That's what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
get lost if we didn't have
Right.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
I saw that as part of the third dot down, curriculum management aligning with our programming priorities, including classroom environments. I thought that was.
That means
where that
something
fit.
else to me.
That meant something else to you. When I thought about it, I said that this would be class size, the environment of the classrooms themselves, how we manage those things. So that's where I saw that piece that we've always talked about.
Yeah, I agree. It should be its own line that states it so we don't lose track, and it is truly a priority written down in the plan.
Yeah, so we can add another bullet point, arrow point, whatever we're calling that, to, what's the wording of our goal around that this year? No, I'm sorry, for class size, right? That what did we?
Appropriate. Whatever that means.
Well,
I don't know that we've reduced it to a phrase, we've just had conversations about it.
Yeah, so
You
we're-
had some notes to us about that
shared
recently.
notes,
Yep.
I'm trying to get to them.
Sorry, and I don't have this one to necessarily edit, but to make a note of it, right, so instead of 4, it would be 5. You have suggested wording to quickly, what can you throw out there? Maintenance of our class sizes as we've outlined, that's not very sexy.
No.
I don't think it's maintenance. I think in our conversation, we talked about
work to be clear, concise, and, as we go through the process. But just an idea of perhaps saying, identify and allocate up to an additional 1% of our annual budget for district facilities projects, utilizing the building condition survey as a resource to identify potential projects. That's a little long, but.
Yeah, it's a little wordy.
I don't know. I think the key
the-
takeaway, I
Yeah.
guess, maybe in looking to that is just making sure the 1% is understood. We already allocate some funds within the budget to take care of things that could
Maintenance,
happen
sure.
throughout the year, right? As a, could be maintenance needs, could be repairs that happen unexpected throughout a year.
Right.
So just making sure that 1% is more so, up to an additional 1% for
That's what
such
you're saying.
projects.
We have a building facilities budget.
Correct,
Part of our
yeah,
budget.
so I guess that's,
This
it
is-
doesn't have to be this, what I said,
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is trying to get at the end of each year, we do some projects, they weren't
Correct.
necessarily planned, now we want to be more planful. We know
Correct.
these things need to be done, but we didn't plan to do them.
right.
So
yeah.
that's different than what's been in the budget year over year, right?
Yep. So just make sure that the 1% is not, that's not the end-all 1%, but on top of what we may already do as a district, just to make sure
Right.
it's.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's. a good
Sorry,
point.
yeah, it doesn't have to be
We
the
don't know how
f-
to make that distinction. We know the intent, right? But
Yes, yep.
Not everybody may by just reading it.
Right.
That's always the case.
Yes.
When you're part of the original conversation, it gets explored, and then it gets written down, and then you're like, okay.
Well, there's no doubt we spend more than 1% when you take that part of the budget already, right? With
Yes.
personnel and everything else.
Correct. Yep.
So this is indeed supposed to be addressing something different.
So, that's all.
No, that's a good point.
Thanks.
Just don't know how to reword it.
Thank you.
So it's a shift, right, from our past goals. I think, indeed, we've said we're feathering back, we're comfortable where we've gotten, that we can be more monitors rather than what we've done in terms of, I don't know, right sizing. I hate that kind of
Well,
word. I'm not sure what the word I'd like, but.
I would say that the presentation that we just had around enrollment trends is reassuring to some degree that we're going to have some stabilization in enrollment very soon in the district, and that that's one challenge or variable that we're not going to have to continually, I mean, I know it's going to be a little while, but it eventually will stabilize as the kids move through the system.
Yeah, and we're about there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not really that far different from where we are.
Yeah.
But all those things are coming together. We have a strategic plan. I mean, I just feel like we're being more purposeful, right? And feathering back, whatever word we want to use allows us now to monitor in real time what's going on, because we know where we're going, what we're wanting to do. And that's what we're trying to represent here, establish and maintain. There's other areas that do need some help still. We've heard for multiple years mental health, but that's why it's a goal there. But does that mean we're ready to adopt this tonight with those? If this were the only addition, establish and maintain, or if we wanted to reword the second bullet point enough to identify it as, it shares the intent more effectively in the wording, even though we know what the intent is, this group right here. I don't know, how do people feel about adoption of the goals? We're wanting to do it, we need to do it, we're at the time frame to do it, but.
You have the whole sentence of establish and maintain.
So I have just that, establish and maintain instructional and developmentally appropriate class sizes. Is that good? Was there any suggestion for the other ones? I can't think of.
Well, you do have the maintenance of aging facilities, so that's inherent, right? That's why it's also
That's the
separate.
inherent one, right.
So
No,
that's,
so that I like. I think that justifies why we keep it separate, more so, because the maintenance is our budget normal, what we've
Right.
done, our practices. This one is our more purposeful for some of the major things that come up or need to come up. I don't know. We can be satisfied with how it's worded, or? Especially the three of you, sorry Judy's not here, but aren't on the Audit and Finance Committee, right?
Mhm.
So, again, this moves forward, and you use this to communicate.
yeah, this is about, communicating, this is where we are, and these are our priorities. Conversations will be, and they're aligning to these main themes that we've been talking about. We're all starting to merge and have those conversations.
So you feel comfortable with this in terms of going to the your team and?
I completely feel comfortable with this. I've shared this with the team in its draft form on multiple different occasions, and there's lots of excitement, again, about the intentionality of it, and I think the class size feedback that we received today is appropriate with conversations that we've been having as an administrative team, and I know the staff has also been having those conversations too, so it aligns perfectly.
So can I just throw a little monkey wrench in here, because when I think about budgeting, this is all internal, this is what we, Fairport, want to do with the monies that we get. But there is a piece that says, how do we get the monies that we need? Because we've seen an increase in a number of different areas. There's not, our teachers are asking for assistance, our administrators are asking for assistance. We're seeing a great rise in certain issues, and I'll focus on mental health because it's new, because it's not the old way of doing things when you just, and because the state certainly is not putting any attention to that. So my question is, how do we go outside of Fairport and say to the people who will be providing us money, the same as before is not enough? Less than the same as before is not enough. The students that we have are not, what was someone was saying, it's not your mother's Fairport, someone said that. And what the legislature is continuing to give us is less and less and less, and our needs are not in that area. They're stopping us by saying you're going to have the 2% revenue increase, and we've got to somehow come up with the information to our legislators to say there has to be a change. There has to be more money coming in to meet the different needs of our students. And this could be a very difficult year because there's so many of them that are new that don't have that longer term, information, background. And I just.
Yeah, I guess I haven't looked into what it is.
So I'm not looking at this in terms of what's our budget goal and what do we want Matt and the administrators to do. What do we as a community, what do we as a board, what administrator say to the people who provide us with some of our money, not just to our local taxpayers. Local taxpayers, we're gonna do a very thorough and transparent program if I would just choose to look at it. But the other question is, we have been getting less and less percentages from our state. And your needs are changing, and it's not the same question that I'm raising that what you've got here.
I just
say we have to somehow say, we need to inform and advocate for our students, for our community, with the other agencies and state and local, state and federal areas that provide us with some of our funds, and that are required to provide us with the funds.
And I think these goals provide clarity and focus when we have conversations with those entities. I know that there's March 4th and 5th, there's a planned Albany trip. I know that we'll be having Saturday morning breakfasts with our legislators in the very near future. I know that we meet with them personally with meetings, and having these goals defined speaks to real live needs, very well articulated, that we can speak to why, we can put why underneath each one of those.
I guess it doesn't answer your question, and it's a good point. Of the new elected officials, at least national, through, I hear on NPR, right, that it was a lot of education-related people got elected. I don't know, though, what that was in New York, if that was the case or not overall. I don't know if we've heard, but I hope that would.
Joe Morelli's wife was a teacher. He always tells us that.
Right. I hope that would bode well, though, if that's the case. It generally say people are supporting their. What am I trying to say? I don't know. Can you tell me? That those people will have more reason to support local public education rather than less.
I would move that we approve the budget goals as amended.
So that was, thank you, my next question. Do we need a motion to amend them in order to approve them?
That's my motion.
I will second that. So we're amending with this, establish and maintain instructional and developmentally appropriate class sizes. Did I get them all? Is there anything else at this time officially? Okay, so we have a second. Any discussion around that change of the goals? All in favor of changing the draft? So then are we ready to vote on it? Yes? All in favor of the amended goals as they are? Very good. We have our no longer draft 2019-2020 budget goals. Who will type those in officially? You'll take.
We will take it from there as long as I have that wording. If you,
Okay, I will type it.
And you gave me the draft, yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
If you just want to type that statement, you don't need to type the
To
whole
an
thing.
email.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Type, did I say type?
Well, I'm not going to dictate it, so. Okay, board policies, first reading. Need a resolution to approve the first readings? And this is quite a list, you all have been working hard. So, motion to approve? Damon, second. Kevin, any questions around these?
I did have a question around the immunization policy. And I don't know that, I mean, it said that everybody needs to be immunized unless they have
Religious.
a religious or, but then the last statement was New York State doesn't recognize
Religious exemption.
religious exceptions. So is that contradictory to each other, saying that we'll accept kids not being immunized? I mean, realizing that not immunized kids are the weak link in the process. So, I mean, do we accept that, or what?
They have to have a real foundation, apparently, and.
Yeah, because we
Right, a
muddled over
history of
this.
it, right.
So this is, New York state law does not recognize exemptions based on parents or guardians' personal or philosophical beliefs. That's not religious
Not
beliefs.
religion.
So they're distinguished. So they recognize if there's a religious belief, they'll recognize that. However, if it's like, I just believe,
Right.
you know, so I think that's how it's distinguished.
It's kind of a fine line though, right?
No.
It is, and we agreed, I think, to let you discern that one.
Right,
Okay, all right,
yeah.
okay,
It'll all go to him.
okay, all right.
I mean, there are just, there is a difference, though. You could see the difference of, I don't believe in them, as opposed to my religion doesn't allow for it. And then you'd have to prove that you've been in that religion. You couldn't just join yesterday.
All right, okay, all right.
You know,
Okay.
so.
My other question was, I saw the email about the phys ed classes, that, you know, Joyce, and I was just a little unclear as to what I mean, I tried to follow it, but I couldn't quite understand where we were coming from.
So do you want to share?
Yeah, well, it's very difficult to meet the requirements, the commissioner's requirements, and almost no one does. And I must have been in our on board or someplace, I read that the state's done some
Right.
audits on it.
Right.
And almost nobody
Right.
is meeting it. So I'm just concerned about the wording.
Okay.
I'm wondering if we want to.
Right. There was a statement in there saying that within the secondary school, they had to have so much minutes per week of phys ed, unless it was satisfied with another activity or something. And I was like, is that an opportunity possibly for kids that are on sports teams to use that? I mean.
So that becomes a bigger conversation with implications,
Yep.
that would imply staffing and.
Yep.
And.
Just trying to understand whether that's legal consideration. I mean, I'm not proposing that we do that. I'm just saying, at what level do we have that flexibility if we needed it for scheduling purposes or something like that?
At the elementary level, or?
At the high school level.
At the high school level. Again, I know that Mr. Killian and we had an extensive conversation, and he would be happy to come in and talk to the policy committee to develop that further, on both sides, the elementary side and on the secondary side, to address that question. So we do have that flexibility to answer your question.
Okay, because I know that there's some cases where there's a kid that is very active in a lot of things and wants to take an extra elective, but doesn't have room in their schedule, but has gym,
Mhm.
but they're also on the cross-country team. So they're, you know, just like,
I think it has to be with a phys ed teacher. That's why recess doesn't count.
Yeah.
It
No,
needs
I-
to
At the elementary level,
Right.
yes, yes.
So, I mean, it does have
Yep.
some.
No, I'm talking really
some
more at the high
rigid
school
pieces,
level, with
right,
the
but I mean,
organized
it has
sports.
to be with a phys ed teacher, so if the coach
Yep.
is not a phys ed teacher, I'm not sure
Okay.
that it would count
Yeah, you-
within the law.
You definitely have the flexibility, but the question is, does it translate in Fairport, and is
Yep.
that in the best interest of students?
I'm not proposing
Yes,
anything. Just
exactly.
understand
That's what I'm saying, we
asking.
have the flexibility,
Right,
yes,
okay,
definitely.
I remember one argument at one point about the fact that sports seasons don't correlate to the quarters of the year, and you're getting credit for it on a semester or quarterly basis for physical education. And so that was one of the considerations that we made a while back, because the sports season, I've been on committees where we've talked about this, but it's always, there's lots of ambiguity in this area, so. Oh, well.
Well, this is only the first reading, so we
Yep.
can look at it. It's going to come back again. If we make some changes,
Mhm.
that'll be noted in the second reading.
Yeah, I mean, I guess coming from my non-policy framework, it's like, these are the questions that I ask when I read it. It's like, to what degree do we have that flexibility? So through the policy, you can either lock that down, or you can leave it open-ended to be decided by Brett at some point in time.
Well, the thing is, the law has locked it down.
Yeah.
It's, it's just a very difficult thing to meet because of our scheduling
Yep.
and our staffing. And it's just the opposite of what you're saying. We don't have enough. It's not that we have too much, that the kid on the cross-country team is also getting phys ed. We don't have enough phys ed.
Yeah.
So you can't take one away.
Well, no, but it did have that statement in there saying that phys ed requirement at the K through 12, or the 7 through 12, or 9 through 12, could be replaced with an alternate activity. That's a separate issue, I think, than
Right. I
think
what
so,
you're talking
yes.
about.
Yeah. So we have to, I think we'll probably look at it.
And the good news is, if you will, our policy committee, I'm just looking at the calendar, meets a few days after our regular Board of Education committee. So this conversation won't come up again for a second reading unless we want to say, are we going to hold this?
Oh.
Because technically, what should happen is all of this, if we approve the first time, we would approve the second reading at the regular Board of Education meeting on the 15th, but we won't have a policy committee meeting until after that. So do we want to hold any of the ones we have questions on for second readings until the policy committee's had a chance to go back and get more information?
But our only question really is phys ed,
Is it
right?
just on the phys ed?
immunization
Everything
is
else can go
clarified.
forward for the second reading? Okay.
So is that a motion to pull this from the first reading, or, because, like I say, we do have a second reading, right? I think so. Right, okay. Okay, so we're not going to pull it, but with
Okay.
that discussion, are we, okay, all in favor of approving the first reading?
All right.
6-0. Have on the backside, school-sponsored field trips, need a motion to approve. Kevin, second Marty, all in favor? And single audit report, motion to approve, Kevin, second. Joyce, just once again, I have a hard copy here if anybody does want to see it. It's, that's not once again, but our finance team has done an excellent job. There was nothing at all there, very boring. Very good audit, which is what you want, so. Anyway, any other questions about it? If you want to see the hard copy, let me know. All in favor? 6-0. And the claims auditor reports, this was just an oversight on that finance committee. We had seen some earlier ones in the year and have seen them now, not officially as a committee. They were sent out to all of us, just if you wanted to look at them. But they were same thing as all the other months, right? In terms of very standard findings, just standard issues, nothing of serious nature. So motion to approve. Kevin, second Joyce. And all in favor? Okay, 6-0. Any board comments?
I just want to say, happy holidays. The Brooks Hill visit last week was awesome. And, all the visits are awesome. It was really fun. And I got my tour guides were young lady from Lebanon and a young lady from Afghanistan, and they were awesome. So it's cool. Cardona Way is always my favorite place to be. So, all right.
Okay, anybody else? Indeed, happy holidays to everyone, and happy New Year by the time we see everybody again, all right? So thank you. We will be going into executive session. We will not be making any decisions out of this, so no need necessarily for people to hang around, but we do need a motion to go into executive session. Evan, second, Marty, all in favor? 6-0. Thank you.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.